Today, we're ranking the second half of Phineas and Ferb's 5th season. We've already gone through the first one, so here's the rest as promised. Before we start, I'd like to make two minor changes from last time, because I realize I've been way too kind with the Meep episode. I've rewatched the whole season, and especially when taking the second half into consideration, you just gotta allow me to demote it to the C tier. I know I initially even considered the A tier for it, and I don't know what I was thinking there, but it's such a mess, and the Meep-Candace dynamic is awesome, but it's not enough to salvage it. It was even worse than I remembered, unfortunately. Also, I will demote the Aurora Borealis 2 to the A tier this time, because it's good, but not that good. And I just can't stand how they would break up Monty and Vanessa off screen, only for them to become an item again here. I'm always optimistic and sometimes super generous in these rankings, but here I was way too generous. Okay, now we can get started. We start strong with Attack of the Candace Suit. So this episode sets up a pretty creepy and eerie atmosphere at the start, just wonderfully, as the suit tries to eat Jeremy and Doof, spying on them from afar with this mysterious ambiance, and the fact that this part of the episode relies on an evening and a night setting as well, it just kicks things up a notch. I've already said I really like nighttime episodes on Phineas and Ferb just because they're so rare, but here they took advantage of literally the entire day, which is so very rare. The song All Skin, No Bone, despite not being my favorite, it also enhances these mysterious vibes even more. Another aspect I think they handled masterfully is how they had Candace complain that no one has it worse than her at the start of the episode, only for her to later realize she's been taking her life for granted. And it doesn't feel like one of those cheap, sappy morals as one would expect, because okay, yeah, despite this being a pretty overused phrase and concept in general, when you see things from the Candace Suit's perspective, you can't help but feel sympathy for it. And again, the music makes the whole sentiment feel so much more genuine too during the flashback. The message works because of how Beatrice wants precisely what she, Candace, has. And because it's molded after her and looks like her, it also helps the girl put things into perspective even further. Not to mention, feeling empty and alone in this world is something Candace would understand quite well after episodes like Unfair Science Fair Redux, or I guess even the Candace movie. In general, I love the Candace Suit character, and I'm glad, so very glad it got a happy ending with Klimpaloon. Finally feeling like she belonged, having found her place in the world. The Klimpaloon resolution is just both ridiculous, but at the same time, a match made in heaven. I love it. I really hope Beatrice will appear again in the future for a cameo or two. There's one single issue I have with the episode though, and it's in the animation department. I was way too confused the entire time trying to understand whether the characters could actually see what the audience saw. Jeremy didn't seem to be able to tell apart a Candace-suited Doof from real Candace, and neither could the rest of the gang, including the boys, her brothers, even though they did describe the suit as being 6 feet tall and slouching, and when only real Candace could talk, so I don't understand if that's supposed to be a joke, as in haha, everyone is so oblivious, lol, or if people really couldn't tell at all. Linda couldn't tell either, but we do know being aware of her surroundings isn't exactly a talent of hers, so that could have made sense, but why would the rest not notice? The bigger issue though is that later on, Isabella asks Jeremy how he even managed to figure out that wasn't really Candace, because she says it fit her just perfectly, it was a perfect match. So now wait. Now you can tell it's a perfect match? And the worst part is that, at first, after the suit and Candace wrestle in the alley and Beatrice comes out victorious having eaten Candace, we, the audience, see it as a perfect fit. Yet, in the very next scene, the suit looks off for absolutely no reason. At first I thought it was a stylistic choice so that very young kids wouldn't get too confused and would keep in mind that that's not real Candace, but I doubt that's the case. Plus, they made that abundantly clear one scene ago when the suit looked at itself in the mirror, and the suit's voice didn't change either, so what's going on here? It should be a perfect fit in theory, but the animators chose not to make it look like it. Feels like there was some kind of miscommunication between the writers and the animators. The way the suit looked and was supposed to look was way too inconsistent. So that's pretty much my only complaint, I guess. The rest of the episode was really awesome and worked so well. I'm not sure what the general consensus consensus is about this episode, so I really would like to hear your takes in the comments. But all things considered, I'd still place it in the S tier, though at the very bottom of it. Book Club is so much fun, and I love the way it deviates so much from the usual story structure, with a Linda-centered episode for once, with only one single storyline for the entire episode. It's so refreshing to break free from the usual formula through a more linear structure of the episode, both here in this segment and Attack of the Candace Suit as well. Instead of having a Doof story, a Candace story, a Phineas and Ferb story, it's pretty original given the formula. I am a huge fan of the rivalry between Linda and Samantha Sweetwater, and especially of how Candace encourages her mother and gladly helps her. It reiterates that Candace's busting schemes are not mere, vain, desperate attempts she makes, but actually something she quite enjoys and even gets a thrill out of. It's a much appreciated change of pace to see her so caught up with busting Mrs. Sweetwater, so much so that she doesn't even care in the slightest what it is the boys are doing. Irving joining the action, I never thought I'd say it, but it was a welcome development. Overall, I love the idea of the Flynn ladies spending some mother-daughter quality time together, and even if Irving is in the mix, it was a cool new way of using his character. He usually can't quite help Candace bust the boys, just because he doesn't want to, but heck, he can help Linda. Also, it was so nice to see all the moms all together for the first time ever. I like the idea that all the moms are friends. I really wouldn't mind exploring their group dynamics and even Linda's relationship with Addison's mom once more. Actually, it's not like I wouldn't mind it, I would actively actually love it and really hope it'll happen. So Book Club, welcome to the S tier too. I swear, the second half of the season started really strong with these two, but I won't be so kind with the rest of the episodes cause there's some real duds in the mix, but these two, just wow. The battle days, I feel like we've already talked plenty about it. I love the premise because of its potential, but not the episode itself as much. It's not bad at all, by all means, but when I see what could have been, what could have come out of it, I'm just so upset we got such a short time with this premise. The story itself is simple, but we're talking about generational trauma. Let's see Doof really deal with it after his wretched childhood. Why not get his parents involved? Damn, that would have been so cool. I always wondered what type of relationship Vanessa had with her grandparents. They could have made a whole hour-long movie with this generational trauma thing. I'm gonna have to place it in the B tier. It's good, could have been way better, but I've already talked plenty about it in my review of the season, so if you haven't checked it out, you can hear my take on it there. Mantis fact. Pretty average episode, a little weak maybe if you ask me. I found the Mantis part much more amusing than the whole birdhouse thing. In fact, I probably would have given the episode song to Doof, since he had something more interesting going on. Especially because, like with most season 5 songs, our Big Bird Mansion, it's good, I love the singing, but it's so specific and dedicated to such an average plot that it just ends up being one of those super forgettable songs. But my main issue with the episode is its ending, for both stories actually. First, Doof turns small, then even smaller, and is attacked by the Mantises, and then that's it? His stories sometimes do end this way, where whatever he was planning turns back to bite him in the posterior, but I was genuinely curious to see what would happen next. And after Candace fails to bust the boys, there is this scene of everyone turning into mock macaws, and then we fade to black and they say, the end? This is supposed to be a joke to end things on a silly note, but I was waiting for a twist or a punchline that just never happened. I was trying to figure out if maybe this scene was a reference to a movie, but I really couldn't think of anything. I looked it up, again, I couldn't find anything. It was just a weird way to end the episode. It left me kinda dissatisfied, so I would probably place it in the C tier. The nightmarator. Now, the first 2 minutes of the episode, they seem kinda wasted with Candace's busting attempt and Perry going to Doof's place, because they only take away time from the rest of the other stories, and honestly, it's not a particularly funny sequence either. Entertaining, sure, it sets the scene and all, but I guess I would have preferred to see more of those stories. I will say though that I really do like that scary ambiance with the gray sky and even more ominous vibes once more, although I'm not sure when this episode is supposed to be set, because Candace said she hated this time of year, but what time of year even is it? Is this the next Halloween? So is this the first episode set to take place during the next fall? It'd be useful information for my timelines. The thing about the episode is we see everyone's dreams and nightmares, and dreams aren't really supposed to make sense, so you can get away with pretty much anything. We move so quickly from one dream to another as well, so it's never boring. What it is though is kinda fast-paced. We see 7 dreams in 9 minutes, jumping from one place to another, which kinda reminds me of that Simpsons episode, 22 short stories about Springfield, where every character in town gets either a few seconds or a couple minutes to show us their daily lives, and doing it with a dream theme is actually a cool idea, although every time I was left wanting to see more out of each dream. I enjoyed all those stories, although I probably would have preferred had they focused on 3 main stories, like in an anthology episode, focusing on Perry, Vanessa, and Buford's nightmares, for instance, turning them into little adventures with higher stakes, following the same structure of Season 4's terrifying tri-state trilogy of terror, which, would you look at that, again, was 20 minutes long. Or maybe even just Vanessa and Buford's dreams for the episode's first and second story would have been great, and then for the third one, they could have shown very short moments of everyone else's dream in fast succession, culminating in the dream creatures coming over the screen to tie it all together. I know I keep expecting a story from episodes that don't really mean to have one, so I should probably just drop it. The concept is cool, but they could have done way more with it. I guess I would give it the B tier. Doof in retrograde. Here Candace plays hard to get with the voice invention and is all casual and laid back, and it was very fun to watch. In fact, the best part of the episode is Linda finding Candace's attitude extremely creepy and unsettling.
Just walk with me. Sure, hun.
I love the way she delivered that line, it's just flawless. She sounds absolutely terrified. Baljeet and Irving's pair-up was also a welcome change. In fact, I kinda wish we had more time with this dynamic, as Irving strokes Baljeet's ego and Baljeet realizes just how creepy Irving is, which not enough people are mentioning at this stage in their friendship. Doof doesn't really have a story, unfortunately, which is a shame because I love the song's lyrics and what he expressed through song. It would have been so cool to see what he expressed in the episode itself. He says that being the center of the universe is not as fun as it used to be, he thought it would never grow old, but now the shine's worn off and the novelty's over, making him regret his decision. This is a story we didn't really see play out in the episode. I really would have wanted to see him invent an innator that makes people crave his attention, so he would finally feel appreciated, until it all becomes way too much for him to handle. Much like in that Fairly Odd Parents episode where Timmy wanted to be the most wanted kid in the universe. It could have been Doof's story for the episode. The way it is, they kinda took this concept a little too literally. I can't help but wonder what Doof was even trying to achieve with this innator. It's probably supposed to just be wacky, I guess. Bend it like Doof. Huh. I don't like soccer, but that's not even the issue. The thing is, I've always found it so extremely hard to enjoy an episode of a show that's entirely centered around certain sports. Simply because in a 10-minute episode, you can't really show the entire game, unless it's a super short 10-minute long game, so you can, and actually gotta show just the highlights. But in doing so, the competition element is kinda weakened. It's basically lost. I really do love me a good competition, a race or a challenge when we can see the whole thing develop and go down. But here, I really can't get into it. It really means absolutely nothing to me that this team scored a goal, oh now the other team did, But my personal qualms aside, which I'll try not to consider too much when ranking this episode, I just can't stand these guest stars starring as themselves. It feels like the cheapest random excuse to bring them on our screens. And honestly, I didn't even care to catch their names either. I had no idea who they were, and their inclusion felt so forced, especially how they didn't contribute to the story at all. They even left at some point. I couldn't stop asking myself, Why? I mean this with the utmost respect for these two guest stars. I have absolutely nothing against them. I'm sure that they're really awesome people, but it felt like the episode was created with the sole purpose of involving them in the story. Yet, they had no idea what to do with them even, so it wasn't done effectively at all. People guest starring as themselves rarely leads to good results. If you wanna throw random people in the mix, then bring back a player from the Nostrils from My Fair Goalie for Love Muffin, and I don't know, Lulu Jones, so she can bring her chaotic energy to play with Auka. Nobody said she's not a great soccer player. I really want to see Lulu Jones again. What's been going on with her? Monogram and his competitive nature were the only highlights of the episode, really. Phineas and Ferb's hit that thing with the stick story did absolutely nothing for me either. It was a pretty weak episode. I'd leave it in the C tier. Now we have Duplicated, another episode I've covered in my review of the season already, but damn it, what a concept. Now, if Evil Carl could carry a whole 40-minute episode back in season 3, Evil Phineas and Ferb could easily have done the same. There's so much they could have done with this. They could have even done a whole movie about this. They totally could have, especially with a Candace and Vanessa pair-up, and maybe focusing more on Doof's jealousy towards Roger now that Vanessa called him his role model. When the show parodies itself, it just reaches the highest highs ever. The song We're Taking Over is quite catchy too, I gotta admit it, although had the boys and their friends sung it, it really could have been something else. This is one of those songs that's fine as it is, but with the right singers, not saying that the actual singer wasn't good, but you know what I mean, it really could have been peak. So had they extended it to at least a 20-minute runtime, it could have been a top spot contender. It's still in the S tier, high up, but probably below the Candace Suit. And we're going from a first place contender to the last place ever. Congrats, Space Adventure, you win. Well, lose. Now, I watch Phineas and Ferb because I like Phineas and Ferb. I like its characters, their personalities, their journeys. I love the message and that optimistic, inspiring, can-do attitude that the boys have, and even those introspective aspects of Doof and Candace's characters. But without the characters, there's no Phineas and Ferb. We're left watching a completely different show. I can assure you, I didn't laugh once while watching this episode, and you have to believe me, I tried, even getting into the story, I just couldn't. The protagonist is the most unlikable jerk, and the rest of the characters did absolutely nothing to get me interested or invested in them, who they are, what they're doing. I guess this still could have been, at the very least, an opportunity to take a peek at this important show within Phineas and Ferb's universe, perhaps learning what type of content Phineas, Ferb, and their friends consume. Yet, it left me wondering why the heck Baljeet would even enjoy such a show. What's there to like? I would expect him to appreciate the characters and their complexity, but I guess they couldn't really have shown much of that in 10 minutes, but they didn't even try. The episode felt like a chore to sit through and a waste of a slot for a better episode, honestly. One thing I think maybe, if we're trying to be as optimistic as possible, that I think could have probably saved the episode, it would have been to have Buford's commentary throughout the whole thing, pointing out all the issues, interrupting the story every minute or so, even talking over certain sequences like a voiceover, interjecting, making things more meta, and with Buford's humor, it really could have helped. Now, it was a director, Robert Bowen, I think, who during production of the Candace movie made a little animatic for a space adventure themed episode, and he kept on working on it until it became a fully fledged story. It was just for fun for him and the rest of the writer's room, but everyone was so fond of the idea that they turned it into an actual episode. In a way, this is kinda wholesome because to me, it feels like one of those home movies you make with your siblings, or in my case, with my cousins, and we made several, and you absolutely love them, so much so that they end up becoming part of your personal lore, with jokes only you guys understand, making your vision come to life. They're your thing. You love them, but then when you show them to someone else, to another friend maybe, you realize they just don't and can't appreciate it as much as you do. I'm glad the writers did it and enjoyed it so much. It's just maybe it was best to leave this as a pilot that wouldn't occupy a spot in this season's lineup. As a different project, a standalone pilot for a whole other show that would be the first episode, the first installment of a brand new series, then sure, but leave it out of Phineas and Ferb. Drugenfest is a strong episode, especially the premise, pretty strong, and since I didn't expect the Doof and Issa rivalry to be brought up again, that was really a pleasant surprise. Again, as I said in my last video on the season, I think there's so much more that could have been done with this episode to take advantage of the Doofabella dynamic, especially had it had more time to work with. In fact, let me give you an idea to just give you a sense of how a more elaborate story could have worked. Other than showing people in the tri-state area panic a little over the lost trade agreement with the Druselstanians, just to highlight the higher stakes, I believe that instead of simply baking the final giant Drugen, the writers could have set up at the start of the story how, other than the giant Dunkelberry, the Drugen requires one more unique, specific, and perhaps even improbable ingredient that can only be found in a faraway, dangerous location. So once the smaller Drugen is turned into chocolate, the only way for the gang to bake another and follow the original recipe to a T is going to collect this extra ingredient, which for the sake of the story could be something as minimal as powdered sugar that goes on top of the Drugen, but it has to be collected from one specific type of sugarcane that only grows on mountain peaks above 5,000 feet or something. It's just an excuse for a side quest, basically. This way, while Phineas and Ferb, the Fireside Girls, and even Norm could focus on building an invention to dry the giant Dunkelberry, possibly not instantly as they do in the montage, while also preparing the other ingredients, and even the Drugen itself, later even bringing the Drugen to the emissaries, waiting for the final sugar to be placed on top of it, planning to meet Doof and Issa there at the dock. So while they do that, Isabella, being a natural leader and being given this big responsibility by the mayor himself, she would step up and volunteer to go collect this ingredient. The sugar, whatever. And Heinz would also volunteer, saying that as an adult, he can provide a wide range of portable innators he has with him. This would be an excellent excuse to send them on a little adventure where Doof's innators might keep getting them into trouble and Isabella would have to fix it all with her Fireside Girl training. Overall, Doof and Isabella had no obstacles to face, so the stakes weren't too high. So something like this could absolutely have kicked the episode up a notch, entering S-tier territory. As is, I guess it either deserves the bottom of the A tier or the very top of the B tier. There. Duper size. I don't think I can overstate just how much I like Duper size, I swear. It doesn't have any mind-blowing premise behind it like most episodes at the top of the S tier, but by changing the starting point of the story, showing us the process of how Doof comes up with a scheme is something that we've never seen before from this angle, and it feels so damn refreshing. In doing so, we just get a glimpse of his daily life as an evil scientist, and how he just gets his plans going. Episodes like Undercover Carl and Cloudy with a Chance of Mom also show his process, but in a much quicker way as he just jumps right into the action. The story here flows so very well, this is just the ideal runtime for it, and the song Doofnasium is a banger, and it's probably one of my favorites from the entire season. Not to mention, the humor Vanessa provides by taking part in Doof's ridiculous scheme it's priceless. I'd place it in the S tier, even above Book Club. I'm also a fan of Phineas and Ferb's idea as a whole, and I do appreciate it when Candace's bust is on the move, instead of anxiously sitting at home waiting for Linda to come back. These chase sequences add extra action to her stories. Oh, and of course, there's the farmer and his wife too. Not my favorite appearance, but it's always appreciated. I simply cannot think of one single thing the episode didn't nail, but let me know your thoughts on it. Despite being called Croquet Y8, this episode has an awful shortage of footage of Croquet Y8. The big idea from the boys involves portals scattered all over the world, so while Hockey Z9 and Football X7 both took place in an arena or a relatively normal-sized stadium, here the playing field seems to be pretty much all of Earth, so there's even more to show to guarantee the audience understands how the sport works. We got the basics down, I guess, but we don't have a clear idea of how everything's supposed to work in practice. practice. Seeing it would have been really helpful, maybe with just a few more shots of the kids playing. And now, even though I can buy that Jeremy and Candace didn't realize they were dealing with a peribot for their documentary, the moment the robot started emitting smoke, it seems a little too much. You'd think they would understand that's not what a platypus does, or any living being. It's even fine to show the smoke, but make them think it's coming from the kitchen or something. They can't possibly be that oblivious and just go along with it. Oh, the platypus is emitting smoke. Oh yeah, no, whatever, it happens, I guess. I love, however, how Jeremy's taking a zoology course for his college application. He's following in his mother's footsteps. How cool. So even though the documentary thing worked well, there's nothing too crazy or too memorable about this episode, so I gotta go for the B tier. Dinner Reservations is my buddy. I've been thinking about it non-stop ever since it came out. I love the concept, love the idea, but man, they didn't need a longer runtime. I've already said it enough, I know. Even despite all the possible improvements that could have been made to it, my main problem at this point is I have no idea where they're gonna take this. Is this storyline gonna lead to a Monty-Nessa breakup soon? Or are Doof and Monogram gonna acknowledge their children's relationship next time they interact? Is this gonna affect their dynamics, or Monty and Vanessa's? My main fear is that now that the truth got out, this star-crossed love story thread is gonna be dropped altogether, simply because we've reached the climax already, and Doof and Monogram seem to agree to let the lovebirds have their relationship despite their rivalry. So are we gonna pick this back up in 10 episodes and decide they're not fine with it anymore out of the blue? No, this is just it. Which is just another reason why this episode desperately needed to be longer. If they were gonna wrap it up on a high note with Monty and Vanessa having their dad's blessing, all in just one single episode, then at least make the whole thing epic and dive deep into all the possible issues both dads might have with it. I choose to believe they'll take the story somewhere interesting and hope this is not the end of it. Despite my vision being very different from what the writers went for, the episode in itself is still good. Rebel Hot Tub is next. It was kinda sad how Buford's friends didn't want to join him in the tub. I mean, sure, it's not like swimming in spring water, but still, do it for your friend. I have mixed feelings about this one, simply because they hyped up this Rebel Hot Tub so much over the course of the entire season that it didn't really live up to the hype. The thing is, it would have been so very hard to live up to it anyway. They really would have had to do something pretty epic here. That aside, my main issue with the episode is that the story is almost too simple. There's a little character journey for Buford, and dedicating the entire episode to him was appreciated, but it feels like it's a bit of an incomplete arc. Buford realizes he can't bully his way through nature, then learns to commune with it, and finally resolves to bullying again, but for a good cause this time, saving someone, or rather something he cares about, which, okay, it's an arc alright, but it would have made a little more sense had he, for instance, started the episode meaner than usual because his friends have been ignoring his Rebel Hot Tub requests for weeks. Then, to his surprise, they finally accommodate his wishes, but instead of having the gang disgusted by the idea of swimming in clam chowder, it would have made sense for Buford to resolve to bowling to get his friends to leave him alone with Chowdina because he wants to enjoy it all by himself, since they didn't appreciate it before. Then he has his arc and realizes it was a mistake to keep his friends away from Chowdina because of how amazing it is, and might want to apologize, letting them enjoy Chowdina as well. The episode could either end with Chowdina melting before he can get his friends to use it, still keeping the whole speech Chowdina gave in canon, and Buford returning to the backyard could let his friends know how much he appreciated the Rebel Hot Tub. Or Chowdina could have survived the trip back and could have made it to the backyard again, thanks to Doof's irritator, of course, only for Buford to bully his friends into Chowdina, this time however meaning well, like he did back on the island. As in, he's bullying them into letting them know how much he appreciates them. I can see him go up to Baljeet, shaking his fist at him, telling him, "Jump in and bathe in my kindness this instant." That would have worked so well. Also, this episode we got Diane Morgan as Chowdina, and now this is a guest star cameo I can get behind, not only because I do love Philomena Kunk, but because Diane didn't star as herself. Although I will say that since Chowdina was voiced by Diane Morgan, I kinda expected her character to be a little sillier, perhaps? It is a talking Red Bull hot tub, which is weird in itself, but Chowdina sounded pretty darn wise and understanding, which is not a bad thing, just not what I would have expected from her. Despite initially not caring for it in the slightest, I do enjoy the episode enough now. Although I probably would have liked it more had Chowdina's voice not been a voice in Buford's head, but rather the hot tub being turned sentient by one of Doof's innators, because I kinda like the tub as a character, and I kind of wish he was an actual character on the show. Not a recurring one, duh, but could have been one more weird thing to have Buford keep in his garage. It's B-tier material, I'd say. Entrance exam was fun. We got a lot of Monogram and Carl, and even a different thing for Candace to do, interacting with what she thought was the mysterious force. The only thing that could have made the episode even cooler would have probably been to have Stacy recognize Major Monogram's voice at some point, realizing there must be something wrong with Auka, so she just tries to do her best to cover up any evidence of Auka's existence, distracting Candace from weird trapdoors opening in the house, covering them up with whatever she can find. She knows about Auka now, so let's have some fun with it. Let's not waste any more of these opportunities. Had the boys had a slightly more interesting big idea of the day, I might even have ranked this in the S tier, honestly. Dungeons and dating. I absolutely love the dating part of the episode, not as much the dungeon thing, but I think that's just personal preference. Reality TV I couldn't care less about. But parodies of reality TV, now that's my jam. Doof on a dating show is so beautiful to see, with Vanessa and Norm having very contrasting opinions on the matter. I could have totally watched an episode just on this. In fact, I do wish we got to see Doof interact with the rest of the cast on Passion Villa, because he really didn't. Actually, the A and the B plots, I don't think they're paired up right. The dungeon and the dating thing, despite making for a great title, they're both kinda screen time hungry concepts. They both require a lot of screen time to work, and because turning them into 20-minute stories is not always the solution, I think this episode and Bend It Like Doof should have switched stories. Since Bend It Like Doof contains two super forgettable stories, two concepts that would probably work better as two different B stories, while this one has two intriguing ones that could have worked as two different A stories to two different episodes. The reality TV storyline Doof had could have worked pretty well if paired with the boys Hit That Thing With a Steak story, which is less demanding of a story, allowing the writers to explore the dating aspects much more in detail, exploring more tropes and getting Doof to be this weirdo who doesn't understand how the game works. Pretty great stuff. Likewise, the dungeon thing could have been paired up with Doof's soccer game. Maybe you remove the guest stars and the soccer thing can easily turn into a shorter self-contained B story. Between the callback to Jeremy LARPing and all the ladies being crazy about Perry, which is a recurring thing this season, I guess I could even go for the A tier here. It might even just be Doof on the dating show that's carrying it for me, but I really liked it. Only 3 episodes left. Elevator Irritator has a super simple story that's somewhat of a cliche at this point, but it works wonders. The most important factor is that everyone was stuck in their respective elevator for just the ideal amount of time, without dragging this thing out for too long. And they even managed to give the episode that extra spice near the end. First, with Candace opening up about her reasons for wanting to get her brothers busted, which technically she never stated out loud on the show, so it was pretty cool, and I get that Phineas and Ferb couldn't possibly have been there to hear it, otherwise they would have found a way to talk it out, solve it all, and the show can't really keep on existing, and because the formula would be completely messed up if that was the case, so the boys can't really know how Candace truly feels. Although, isn't that weird how they would just leave as soon as she starts opening up with them? It's as if they were playing with her. Yeah, no, we've already talked plenty about that theory. I kind of feel nostalgic, you know? I'd like to talk more about it, but I don't really have that much more to say. Another highlight was Jeremy telling Candace he loves her. And not only did I not expect this to come up in the elevator episode. But more importantly, I never even considered this as a possibility. I didn't think they would even say it on screen, but I'm so glad they did. It was super sweet. And I love that after Candace's obsession, it's Jeremy who said it first. It's kinda as if he wanted to keep Candace close and speed things up in their relationship so he can keep playing with her. I'm sorry, I can't help but think of my theories. No, it was just a sweet moment, and I gotta hope Candace will say it back at some point, cause she didn't say it yet. That could totally be the premise of another episode. I always thought they would avoid something like this just because they would assume kids don't really care about these things, but no, it was pretty awesome. It's even cool to think that Linda and Lawrence shared their first kiss at Love Handle's farewell concert, and Jeremy told Candace he loves her during Tiny Cowboy's farewell concert. Between all that and even Lish Mertz and the song Think Inside the Box, this episode easily wins a spot in the S tier. Master of Fate is a weird one, so let's start with the easier part to analyze. I loved Perry's story. He might be Outcast's top agent, but I never really liked the idea of him being perfect. It's cool to see how he struggled with teamwork in Sidetracked or even the Outcast Files, and when you think about it, yeah, the fact that he always gets trapped might be something he should work on. Because even though the episode ended with Monogram praising him as by getting trapped, he buys extra time to assess the situation, he claims that's all done on purpose, but the episode clarified this really isn't the case, or at least not always. He should still work on that, because after all, there are traps out there that are nearly inescapable, like the one Rodrigo made in Minor Monogram. I love the agent performance review idea to get him to work on this skill of his, and love to see Doof as a trainer and the temporary trap training truce treaty, the ta-ta-ta-ta-ta.
Man, we are not good at acronyms.
Seeing Agent O be so arrogant, it kinda made me think of how interesting it would be to see Perry deal with other agents, seeing what kind of relationship he has with them. And I really wouldn't mind an ongoing rivalry between him and Agent O. I was kinda bummed to see they ended things on a high note. The boys, however, had a very weird plot, which gave me some serious Lost in Danville vibes, and I honestly don't know what to think about this. I'm not really sure how the whole improbability thing would even work, sitting around for something improbable to happen, and I'm not even sure how I feel about the Hadron Collider being a thing again. It already appeared in Bend It Like Doof, and curiously, in both these episodes we had Perry, Monogram, Doof, and Carl's story take place on that same soccer field. Huh, talk about improbability. But what about the Master of Fate? Why does he exist? No, seriously, why is he a Baljeeta lookalike? Is he from another dimension? Though he did say he travels the universe, so like this universe, so maybe this dimension, but I guess you never know. And why isn't anyone asking questions about his background? I really wish we had context. That probably would have been the coolest thing about this episode. There could have been an interesting story here, especially if he was truly from another dimension. I really hope that's the case. It would really contribute to the multidimensional lore of the show. Instead, we spend their side of the story waiting for a ball to drop in a cup? If this Master of Fate guy is a throwaway random guy for a throwaway random story thread that we're never gonna address again, then I just think this was pretty darn weird and don't even know how to feel about it. But hoping they'll someday explore this again. Maybe there might be a sequel to this episode later down the line, since the Master of Fate's left on a bus, so it's not like he went through a portal or anything, so he might still be in Danville. So I guess I'll place it in the B tier. I just really enjoyed Perry's story. And I don't know, I'm just blinded by the potential this Master of Fate premise has. And finally, Vendpocalypse, the musical. This episode I've talked at length about though, twice already actually, so I don't think you want me to keep dissecting it further. In case you haven't heard my thoughts on it, you can check out this video. It's a super wholesome Doofenshmirtz family story with Norm as the heart of the whole thing. I didn't expect such an episode to exist, but I'm so glad it does. Despite having a few minor, very tiny issues, for the most part, it's excellent, it's a banger. So as promised, S tier. It's a gem of an episode. I'm still not sure though whether I prefer it to Cloudy with a Chance of Mom, because they're both awesome, and I'm glad they're both the pilot and the season finale too, to start things off and wrap them up wonderfully. So if you'll allow it, I'd say this is a tie between these two because I really can't choose. In fact, I'd like you guys to let me know in the comments. So of course, go ahead and rank the episodes yourselves. I'll leave the link to this tier list in the description box below, but especially tell me which one of these two episodes you prefer. In fact, go ahead and choose one of these two episodes to side with and try to convince me that your episode is better. However, if you feel like it would be an outrageous thing to end this tier list with a tie after we've been working on it for basically a whole hour, I will place Vendpocalypse above Cloudy. I generally do prefer Candace stories to Doof and Ferb stories, and I really like the whole adventure with Linda. The emotional core of Vendpocalypse is just so much stronger. Overall though, this was a pretty solid season. It managed to sometimes match the show's highest highs, but we truly did hit rock bottom with Space Adventure. I'm pretty darn satisfied with how things turned out though. The more I rewatch the season, the more I appreciate it. So I suggest you guys give it another go as well if you haven't already. With that said, I thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Ciao!